Hello everybody, I have this 2008 Silverado 3500, that's 6.6 liter, and I'm doing a little bit of work here. Got to replace the radiator. I also have to replace the serpentine belt, and I have to replace the water pump. The customer also got me a lower radiator on this radiator hose on this one. For those of you who own this truck, you probably know this hose is a pretty big hose. Here are all the parts he got me. This is the lower and the upper radiator hose we're going to install. He also got me a radiator and the water pump. Apparently he wasn't sure which water pump is in this truck, so he bought both of them. This water pump does not have the gasket for the backup, so I don't know if we're gonna end up getting a separate. No, there's no gasket in here. Go ahead and take this out. To get the water pump, we do have to take the fender out, but sometimes I leave the radiator in place because there's plenty of room between it. In this case, since I'm replacing it, I'm going to take the radiator out as well. It gives me plenty of room to work in front, and allowing me to take care of some of the maybe I could use my gun for the pulley instead of using the ratchet and the braking bar. If there's plenty of room between them, that's what I would do. The hose is underneath, so once we got the radiator out, we got the upper hose right here out. We got this one brand new. We're going to take this out. I have to disconnect that section of the hose because the thermostats are right under here, and to do that we're going to need to open these bolts, get the plate out, and the thermostat housing basically slides into that metal tube or plastic tube that comes up. So what I do is I just open two bolts, loosen the tube up, get the thermostat housing disconnected, and wiggle it out. That's the easiest way, otherwise it would be very hard, because thermostats poke out of the housing a little bit. This does hold quite a bit coolant, so you're going to need, if you can lift it up, put a bucket under there, that would be great. And if you have a bigger tray, use a bigger tray. You definitely need that. Well, let's get started. First thing, we're going to disconnect both batteries and get to work. I already disconnect the other side. We're going to disconnect this one here. It's 10 millimeter. Get the battery out of the way. Next, we're going to take this out. Let's just disconnect it from here. The thing about these clamps is you got to be careful when you're torquing them down, because they can strip. You do need both hands to pull it out. This entire cover is just sitting on using some mounts down here. There's no bolts on that side. We're going to go ahead and disconnect the charge pipe here. Next, you got to take the fan shroud out. And I'm going to try to take this belt out right now. So I tried to take out the fan, but there is a bracket here. That bracket that mounts onto the thermostat housing was in my way. So I took it out. That was connected here. And I grabbed a little string to hold the cover towards the car, and I got my pry bar at the bottom of that pulley, and I was able to use my plier to get the clutch fan to release. Once the fan's loose, the fan's fastener is loose, you can just spin the blade and get this thing out. So the other bolt is right here. You can see right there, and there's not much room in the front, so you gotta use 13 millimeter. And after it's getting loose, you can probably reach behind by hand. If you once you get that one out, then you gotta go all the way on this side, get to the bolt that's right here. You see that one? Yep, that's another one, and it's facing from the other side. So fans out. Here's one bolt. Here's a second bolt, here's a third mount. So you have to do that. And I got everything out together. Let's move on to the next. What's next? Let's look underneath there. Okay. So right here is your water pump. This is the water pump here. And before we can get to that, we're going to remove this top one here. Take the belt out, of course. Oh shit. We're going to have to remove this out completely because it's in the way of some of the bolts. Crankshaft pulley, this pulley right here, entire housing. And then remove the bracket that is down here. There are 2 bolts on it. Both are from where you can see right there. One you can access from top. The other one, the bottom one, you have to go under the car, access that one from the bottom of the car. And of course, it's going to be a fun. Okay, right here, before you start anything, you have to drain coolant. What I'm going to do is put a bucket under here, remove this little piece here, and then let the coolant out as much as I can. And then I'll remove the bottom hose and let the coolant out as much as I can in the bucket. That's how I will do it. So once you get that out, let's see. So I have to start to remove the radiator. I got this clamp loosened up, and sometimes these radiator hoses get stuck onto the fitting of the radiator so hard you can't even take them off. Sometimes people put a plier on it that damages the hose. What you could do is a pick like this, push it under like that, and guide it around all the way around. Perfect. And you should be able to get this guy out. Alright, I already got the radiator. Has 2 bolts, one here, one at the bottom, right there. We have to remove both of these bolts here. Same on the other side, you got one on top, one at the bottom. You do need to see if you have an engine cooler on the radiator, you're going to disconnect that. If you have a transmission cooler, which is right here, transmission cooler here in the bottom, you're going to disconnect these side, and then you'll be able to just slide the radiator up. There's nothing else holding it in place. Alright, so I got all the radiator disconnected, has not removed it yet. Been working on this while waiting for the radiator to drain. There's 1 bolt here, 1 at the bottom, and then 3 on this side. And once you remove those, you should be able to pull this guy out. So right here, there we go. Here are the 3 bolts. So here's the new water pump, and we have 2 bolts here. We got 1 bolt here, 1 here, and then 1 right here. All these bolts are accessible, okay? However, this sucker here is right behind the crankshaft pulley. Just because of this, we gotta remove the crankshaft pulley. Yes, so the new kit gave us the main O-ring, the top O-ring, and it gave us a paper gasket. And why would you do that? Anyway, so I'll show you where that bolt is. It's right there, behind the crankshaft pulley, hidden. Not the first one, all the way at the bottom one is the one we need to get to. For that, we're going to need to lock the engine in place by putting a torque converter lock tool, and then use a breaking bar and the socket here, I think it's like 36, 12 point, and get this pulley unlocked. Then we can get to the water pump. So I just opened these 2 bolts and pulled this out of the way. Right now I'm going to disconnect this hose so I can swing a little more, and then I'm going to open. Alright, so I've taken the radiator out, I've taken the thermostats out. I gotten the water pump, one side removed, the other one I'm waiting for the crankshaft pulley to be removed. The customer did bring me some of the parts that he wants me to replace. So we got a radiator here, and then we have the lower hose, and of course the upper hose. He also got me, so the water pump gasket that came with the water pump is this paper, and I don't feel comfortable using this. This is the metal one with the silicone coating. We're going to replace that. Got serpentine belts. And we have both thermostats. You replace these. And of course, I think I was noticing some noise from some of the idler pulleys. So I suggested them to replace that. We got some idler pulleys to replace. The original one. So there's a tool that you use to lock the torque converter in place. And then you have the socket and the breaking bar. You're going to open the crankshaft pulley. When it comes to pull the crankshaft pulley off, it should be easy. It should slide out. You don't need any type of pullers. And then you'll be able to get to the back bolt of that water pump. That's one thing I'm not happy about, but we have to do that. After you got all the bolts out, try to wiggle the water pump out of the way. Should be easy. Here we go. The other gasket that I was talking about has to be metal. You could see the original factory one is also metal. So this surface has an O-ring on the other side, on the engine side. We're going to replace that O-ring. I also have to clean the mating surface completely because this side is sealing most of the oil out of the way. So if that O-ring is not seated properly or the surface is not cleaned, you're going to start to see engine oil leak. Here we go. Here's the O-ring. Original one. And so I'm going to take a little pick, attach it with my towel, and go on the edge and clean it up. That's what you need to do. Clean that mating surface correctly. So I cleaned the surface over here. I also got this water pump prepped. I got a gasket on here. We also got the metal gasket on here. The older studs has to be transferred from the older water pump to this one. If I could install it with one hand, great. Otherwise, you're gonna follow the instructions how you took it off. There we go. Once the inside pulley lines up, if it doesn't work, you can put your finger in and move the propeller just a little bit until everything lines up. Confirm the water pump sits in place by looking at the gap between this and the mounting surface and also the bottom. Feel it with your hand and the mounting surface. If there's almost no gap, you can start hand tightening the bolts back in place. And do not torque them down until you double confirm the surfaces. Make sure there's no gap and you're not pushing the gasket against the lower flange. Otherwise, the gasket will get bitten and you have a damaged gasket. So far, I've hand tightened the bolts and I've confirmed the surfaces are sitting flush. And tighten it down. All right. These are the 3 bolts on the water pump. The 2 right here has to be tightened with a wrench. To get to this bolt, you have to move this. This is one of those problems where they put this one right in front of this bolt. They put a crank pulley right in front of that bolt. And they put this fan bracket right behind the other bolt. So it's a bit of a headache to deal with, but if you have a little patience, you will get to it. So I got the O-ring back in here. I put some little bit of silicone on it, tighten the bolt here. I do not like how this feels underneath here. It feels a little loose, and I know there's only one O-ring that is securing everything in place. So if I were a customer, I would replace that housing. But again, to get to the housing, it's a headache. So I'd rather, we'll see. Next, we're going to connect the hose back onto here, put a clamp on it. And of course, not to forget to install this crankshaft pulley here. Okay. Yeah, this would require 2 hands. But we're going to put the pulley back in next. Once you line up the pulley with the pin, you can just simply slide it. Perfect. It's that easy. I'm going to put the bolt back in here. You see this bolt I was talking about? It's hidden. It's connected right behind this pipe. You cannot get to it in either direction. You have to take that pipe out. And you think whatever you like about this engineering part. To me, it is stupid. Anyway, I'm going to torque that down because the flywheel is still locked in place. And then I'm going to put this hose back in. I just torqued the pulley bolt. Finished installing the hose. At this point, the only advice I have for you guys is right away go back and take out the torque converter flywheel tool out of there. It's a very small tool and you can easily forget, and when you go to crank your car, you're gonna have a shitload of problem to deal with. So here we go. I got the thermostat housing bolted back together. This is the plate I was talking about that we need to disconnect to get the thermostat housing out. And there's one bolt holding this backup line together. You're gonna make sure you torque that by hand. So here's the new part I got. We're gonna line it up to the studs at the bottom and then slide it back like that. Then we got 3 bolts to hold this one back together. I'm not gonna tighten them too much, but I do have to guide the threads. Again, it's impossible to film shit like this. It's crazy. Got another one right here. Okay. Then we right at this point, I'm gonna plug the sensor. Unplugged. Perfect. And the fastener down here. Perfect. I'm gonna hand torque everything else, but first, before I do anything else, I'm gonna connect the idlers back up here. All right. Okay. Now, I'm just gonna torque everything down and I'll be back. So I got the serpentine belt on. I will add the picture for you guys to see the rotation. Also, it's a lot more easier if you install the fan and the shroud first, then drop the radiator in. That's my opinion. This is how I did it. You guys do however you like. So if you're thinking you can lock the torque converter up by putting a pry bar or anything in place, and then you're about to start the job, I would recommend not to do it. This is the tool you need. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm just going to put this truck back together and let it run to make sure there's no leaks and it doesn't overheat. Call the customer and get it and have them to pick it up. I really appreciate you guys watching the videos, even though I don't show most of the stuff that I can, that I can't, because I don't have a room to put my phone in place, and it becomes extremely difficult to put a phone in place and then start working and it falls off. That's annoying. But later I'll get a pod and hopefully use that one to make more detailed videos. I really appreciate everybody who's supporting me, and thank you so much. I wish you the best and see you in the next video. Please like and subscribe if you can. If you got any good information out of this, appreciate it. Take care. Bye. Okay, everybody, here's the last thing. I ended up adding the coolant, get the truck running. So far, everything looks good. The coolant's up to the level. I added a little bit more just to make sure if there's air in the system, the air will be completely removed. All the hoses down here. Gonna make sure there are no leaks. I'm gonna let the truck run, come to a normal operating temperature. So we're going to let this run until it becomes come to a normal operating temperature, and make sure that we don't have any overheating issues or air in the system. After that, I might have to add a bit more coolant in the system. I'll do that and do one more run. After that, I'll be delivered to the customer. I want to thank you all for watching.